Welcome back. I have to confess that I have hesitated to and struggled with producing these next series of lessons because they deal with a topic and or topics that are so injurious to the human family. We're going to take up the concept of race and racism over the next couple lessons, and they represent a whole series of snares and traps that bedevil us and could propel us into injurious conflicts and actual outright wars. Wars based on words and ideas that in many ways have no basis in reality or in truth or in the concepts of humanity. The concept of race is essentially a visual concept, not a biological one, as it detects visual differences within the human family caused by adaptation to physical environments thousands of years ago, and then assumes that cultural differences seemingly practiced by these different visual versions of humans are biologically transmitted and sustained. Tragically, a deeper sense of race and human difference arose at the infancy of some of our sciences, particularly ethnography and what later became known as anthropology. Samuel Morton attempted to prove racial differences and different racial capabilities by examining human skulls in the 1830s and 1840s. With each skull, Morton performed the same procedure. He stuffed it with pepper seeds. Later, he switched to lead shot, which he then decanted to ascertain the volume of the brain case. Morton believed that people could be divided into 5 races and that these represented separate acts of creation. The races had distinct characters, which corresponded to their place in a divinely determined hierarchy. Morton's craniometry he claimed that whites or Caucasians were the most intelligent of the races. East Asians, Morton used the term Mongolians, though indigenous and susceptible of cultivation, were one step down. Next came South Asians, followed by Native Americans. Blacks, or the Ethiopians, were at the very bottom. Researchers who have since looked at people at the genetic level now say that the whole category of race is misconceived. Indeed, when scientists set out to assemble the first complete human genome, which was a composite of several individuals, they deliberately gathered samples from people who self-identified as members of different races. The Human Genome Project began in 1990 and was essentially completed in 2003. In June 2000, though, when the results were announced at the White House ceremony, Craig Venter, a pioneer of DNA sequencing, observed the concept of race has no genetic or scientific basis. Perhaps the first unconscious stirrings of what becomes the modern concept of race arose within the Iberian Peninsula. Following the Moorish conquest of Andalusia in the 8th century CE, the Iberian Peninsula became the site of the greatest intermingling between Jewish, Christian, and Muslim believers. During and after their reconquest of the Muslim principalities in the peninsula, the Catholic monarchs Isabel and Ferdinand sought to establish a uniformly Christian state by expelling first the Jews in 1492 and then the Muslims in 1502. To ensure that only truly faithful Christians remained within the realm, the Grand Inquisitor Torquemada reformulated the Inquisition to inquire not just into a defender's religious faith and practices, but into their lineage. Only those who could demonstrate their ancestry to those Christians who had resisted the Moorish invasion were secure in their status in the realm. Thus, the idea of purity of blood was born, limpeza de sangre, not fully the biological concept of race, but perhaps the first Occidental use of blood heritage as a category of religio-political membership. The first important articulation of the concept of race came with the 1684 publication of A New Division of the Earth by Francois Brenier. Based on his travels through Egypt, India, and Persia, this essay presented a division of humanity into 4 or 5 species or races of men in particular, whose difference is so remarkable that it may be properly made use of as the foundation of a new division of the earth. His ideas were based upon his travels in the Mongol Empire between 1656 and 1668, which he made known to the world through the publication of his book in 1670. In his essay on the different human races, first published in 1775 and revised in 1777, Immanuel Kant argued that all humans descended from a common human lineal root genus in Europe, which contained the biological seeds and dispositions that can generate the distinct physical traits of race when triggered by divergent environmental factors, especially combinations of heat and humidity. This, combined with patterns of migration, geographic isolation, and inbreeding, led to the differentiation of the 4 distinct pure races: the noble blonde of Northern Europe, the copper red of the Americas and some parts of East Asia, the black of Senegambia in Africa, and the olive yellow of Asian India. As the behavior of humans developed, having discovered the potentialities of the New World, inhabited by a race of beings deemed less civilized and developed than the European colonialist regimes, and very vulnerable to European diseases and military technologies, the concept of race became economically practical to many via the institution of chattel slavery and the plantation system of the Americas. The sugar plantation of the Spanish, French, and English in the Caribbean frequently proved to be supremely profitable. The basic concept of the plantation, turning the farm fields into a factory which blended agriculture and technology with an ownership class that relied on subservient, even slave labor, was applicable to many products and continues to this day in various parts of the world. The concept was further enhanced by European colonialism and its intellectual progeny, Orientalism. As Europe expanded in the 19th century, the concept of history became the concept of European progress. Hence, the East, Asia, became seen as and interpreted by Westerners as the opposite of the Western world, and accordingly more of a projection of all the West needed to find and to see and to validate its concepts of superiority than the results of genuine deep understanding and scholarship of cultural differences. The third leg of the tripod that upheld and further encouraged the development of the concept of race was a concept called social Darwinism. Social Darwinism is any of the various theories of society which emerged in Western Europe and North America in the 1870s. Claiming to apply biological, scientific concepts of natural selection and survival of the fittest to sociology, economics, and politics. Social Darwinists argued that the strong should see their wealth and power increase, while the weak should see their wealth and power decrease. Such social Darwinist narratives and theories certainly serve to legitimate the power and the privilege and the wealth that Western civilization began to extract from the rest of the world as a result of historical accidents and colonialism. These narratives have also played out through history and are being contested in these very days. Reading the caption of the one picture there, which separated the Irish from the English and, of course, the Negroes, it says, "The Iberians are believed to have been originally an African race, who thousands of years ago spread themselves through Spain over Western Europe. Their remains are found in the barrows and the burying places in sundry parts of these countries. The skulls are of low prognathous type. They came to Ireland and mixed with the natives of the south and west, who themselves are supposed to have been a low type, and descendants of savages of the Stone Age, who in consequence of isolation from the rest of the world had never been out-competed in the healthy struggle of life, and thus made way according to the laws of nature for superior races. So, we'll talk more about these theories and how the concept of race begins to become the concept of racism or sustain racism in the next lesson.